Peace be upon you, brothers and sisters. This is Said Mirza from MillionaireReason.com, and in today's talk, I wanted to look at pairs in the Quran. The reason I wanted to look at pairs is that I think it's a very powerful proof, and God brings our attention to this fact in the Quran. In His creation that God created, He talks at length about the pairs that are in it, and in the Quran itself, this pairing is woven in the fabric of the Quran. If you have read my book, Chapter 2 of the Quran, Proofs and Pairs, I talk about many instances in the Quran. This pairing shows up day and night, heavens and earth, the sun and the moon, and even God in His attributes, He pairs them usually. We have the Rahman Rahim, which is the Almighty, the Merciful, Samiul Basir, which is the hearing and the seeing, the Wahidul Qahar, which is the one and the overpowering. So, and similarly, in the creation He created, there are pairs. So, let's look at in the Quran where God brings our attention to this pairing of His creation, and then we're gonna go look at one chapter of the Quran, chapter 28, in which this pairing shows up so many times that it becomes it defies any sort of idea that this is a coincidence. It is definitely God is bringing our attention to the pairings He's doing in that chapter. So we're going to read that chapter too. But let's start off with the mention of pairs. This is Brother Garrett's translation of Quran and Complete Revelation, and we're going to be going on reader.quranic.com, which is free for you to use. And it's a great resource. So let's begin. Okay, so we pulled that up. So let's look at chapter 35, verse 11. And God created you from dust, then from a sperm drop. Then made He you pairs. And no female bears or gives birth save with His knowledge. And life is not prolonged for one full of years, nor is his life diminished, save it is in a writ that is easy for God. This one is striking. Chapter 36, verse 36, pairs. Glory be to Him who created all the pairs of what the earth produces, and of themselves, and of what they know not. Now, if you know about the vegetation, trees and plants, they themselves are paired. There's male plants and female plants. And obviously, God has already told us about ourselves that we are created in pairs, male and female, and of what they know not. This is obviously unseen knowledge. But God has given us some of that knowledge, and I think the primary proofs in that regard is the two deaths and the two life. We were without life, so we were dead, and then God gave us life, which is this life. Then He will make us to die again, and then He will recreate us. So this is the pairing, and then also the trumpet on the day of judgment and the hereafter. The trumpet will be blown twice. The first time it will be blown, everything will be dead, and then the second time it's blown, everything will be resurrected. So there's pairings in there as well. So let's look at just this one. um, Chapter 39, verse 6. He created you from one soul, then He made from it its mate, and He sent down for you of the cattle 8 pairs. He creates you in the wombs of your mothers, creation after creation, in 3 darknesses. That is God, your Lord. To Him belongs the dominion. There is no God save He. How then are you diverted? Okay, one more, and then we're going to just switch to chapter 28. This is chapter 42, verse 11. The originator of the heavens and the earth has made for you of yourselves pairs, and of the cattle pairs. He creates you thereby. There is nothing like Him, and He is the hearer, the seeing. See, the pairing of God's attributes, the hearing and the seeing. And then, obviously He created of us pairs. So now let's just jump straight into chapter 28. This isn't that much of a big chapter, so I think we can go through this pretty quickly. I'll stop off and show you the pairings, and I'm sure there's more that I'll miss here. Definitely, go through it again and read it very carefully, and you'll see the pairings. And what these pairings are doing is it's giving you confidence in God's scripture. I mean, that's what a proof is. Back in the day, the proofs were of a different kind. Saleh, he got the camel, the prophet Saleh, and then obviously Moses, he came with the proofs. And we're going to look at those proofs here in the Quran as well. They're shown. But regardless, the Quran itself is a proof, and the Quran is in its text, it is giving us proofs of the evidences of God. So that should be enough to gain faith in this life being temporary, and then the hereafter being permanent. So let's start. In the name of God, the Almighty, the Merciful. Ta, Sin, Meme, those are the proofs of the Claret. We recite to thee from the report of Moses and Pharaoh with the truth for people who believe. So, Moses and Pharaoh, that's a pairing. Moses was a godly man, and Pharaoh was a perfidious evil. Pharaoh exalted himself in the earth and made his people sects. A number among them he oppressed, slaughtering their sons and sparing their women. He was of the workers of corruption. So he was doing two things. He was slaughtering their sons and sparing their women. And we desired to give grace to those who were oppressed in the land, and to make them leaders, and to make them the inheritors. So God desired to give them grace. How? He was to make them leaders and to make them the inheritors. Two again. And to establish them in the land, and to show Pharaoh and Haman and their forces through them what they feared. Again, the concept of pairing Pharaoh and Haman. Haman was his right hand man, if you will. He was a priest. So two evil men, basically. And we instructed the mother of Moses, suckle thou him, then when thou fearest for him, cast thou him into the water, and fear thou not, nor grieve. We will return him to thee, and appoint him among the emissaries. So she was to suckle him, and then when she was to fear for his safety, then throw him in the water. This idea of throwing him in the water and then God rescuing him, this is also a pair in the sense that later down the line we'll see that Pharaoh was also thrown in the water, but he was not saved. So that completes the pairing. And there gathered him up the house of Pharaoh, that he might become for them an enemy and a grief. Pharaoh and Haman and their forces were offenders. So he would serve a dual purpose. He would be an enemy for them, and that he would be a source of grief. And the wife of Pharaoh said, A comfort of a comfort of the eye for me and for thee. Kill thou him not. It may be that he will benefit us, or we will take him as a son. And they perceive not. So Moses was to be a comfort of the eye for her and for Pharaoh, so two. And then it may be that he will benefit us, or we will take him as a son. Again, the pairs. In the morning, the heart of the mother of Moses became void. She had almost disclosed him, had we not fortified her heart, that she be of the believers. Now, this word is the Mu'mineen, which is a believer in the sense, in the only sense you can take it here is that she was believing in the promise of God, that God would return him to her. See, this is what the word believer here means, which has an implication for us as well, that a believer is one who is believing in the promise of God, that God will execute upon his promise and be faithful to his promise. And she said to his sister, Follow thou him, and she watched him from a distance, while they perceived not. Now, you can make the case here that his sister and his mother, they were both allies of Moses. So, that's a pair as well. But, a lot of this is reading into the text. And so I'm sure when you read it, you will see other pairings that I'm not seeing and vice versa, which is fine as long as you see the pairings, the extraordinary amount of pairings showing up here, that it's not random. That's really what I'm trying to bring your attention to. And we had forbidden him wet nurses before. So she said, Shall I direct you to the people of a household who will take care of him for you and will look after him? So again, too, see, they were going to take care of him and look after him. So we restored him to his mother, that her eye be comforted, and she grieve not, and that she might know that the promise of God is true, but most of them know not. So God restored, going back, so you could call this a pairing as well. He was taken from her and then returned. And then, her eye, it says her eye be comforted and she grieve not. So two things happen. And that she might know that the promise of God is true. Now, this is an aside because I mentioned the believers, this is what the belief is, that God's promise will be true. And in her case, her belief was rewarded by God's promise coming true. And this is what it says, but most of them know not. They do not know that God's promise will come true, specifically that he will raise the dead. And when he had reached maturity, and when he reached his maturity and was established, we gave him judgment and knowledge, and thus reward with the doers of good. Again, the duality is there. The pairing is there, judgment and knowledge. And he entered the city at a time of heedlessness among its people, and found therein two men fighting, one of his sect and the other of his enemy. And he who was of his sect sought aid of him against him who was of his enemy. Then Moses struck him and put an end to him. He said, This is of the work of the Satan. He is a manifest misleading enemy. So Moses encountered two men fighting, one of his sect and the other of his enemy. Let's look at more of this. What happens? He said, "My Lord, I have wronged my soul, so forgive thou me." And he forgave him. He is the forgiving, the merciful. You see the pairings there, forgiving, the merciful. He said, "My Lord, for that which thou hast favored me, never more will I be a helper to the lawbreakers." He says, "My Lord," twice. That's another pairing. And in the morning he was in the city in dread, expectant, and when he who had sought his help the day before had cried out to him for help, Moses said to him, "Thou art one clearly erring." Then when he desired to lay hold upon him who was an enemy to them both, he said, "O Moses, wouldst thou kill me as thou didst kill a soul yesterday? Thou desirest only to be a tyrant in the land, and desirest not to be of those who do right." Interestingly, not only did Moses find two men, um, the first day, if you want to call it that, the second day he found another two men. Well, one of them was the same person, but again, two, right? And then there's two instances of this. And he says, the man says, "Thou desirest only to be a tyrant in the land, and desires not to be of those who do right." So again, the pairing is there. And a man came running from the furthest part of the city. He said, "O Moses, the eminent ones are taking counsel against thee to kill thee. So leave thou, I am to thee a sincere counselor." And he went out therefrom in dread, expectant. He said, "My Lord, deliver thou me from the wrongdoing people." And when he turned his face towards Madian, he said, "It may be that my Lord will guide me to the right path." Now, this is the second deliverance of Moses. If you remember, the first deliverance was when his mom threw him in the water and he was saved. And then the second deliverance now is that he, again, was being, well, not again, but he was being persecuted by the people of Pharaoh, and God delivered him. Otherwise, he would have been killed. So, two deliverances for him. Okay, and when he arrived at the water of Madian, he found there a community of people watering, and he found besides them two women holding back. He said, "What is your case?" They said, "We do not water until the shepherds drive hence, and our father is a very old man." So now he encountered two women. Two men before, twice, and then now two women. So the man, woman, that itself is pairing, and then the same thing happens now, it's woman. So he watered for them, then he turned away to the shade and said, "My Lord, I am in need of what thou hast sent down to me of good." So there you go. Interestingly, Moses, let's see here. Yeah, there's more to it. The my Lord looks like a pairing as well, but I'll leave that for you to look into. This is something I just saw. And there came to him one of the two, walking shyly. She said, My father calls thee, that he might reward thee with a reward for that thou didst water for us. And when he came to him and had related to him the story, said he, "Fear thou not, thou hast escaped the wrongdoing people." One of the two said, "O my father, hire thou him. The best thou canst hire is the strong and the trustworthy." Strong and trustworthy. Said he, "I desire to marry thee to one of these two daughters of mine, provided that thou hire thyself to me 8 years, and if thou shouldst complete 10, be that up to thee. And I desire not to create hardship for thee. Thou wilt find me, if God wills, among the righteous." So he is offered this exchange, if you want to call it, that he can marry one of the two daughters of this man, and he is given two terms to pick which one he wants to fulfill. And the terms themselves are even, 8 and 10. He said, "That is between me and thee. Whichever of the two terms I complete, let there be no enmity against me, and God is guardian over what we say." Then, when Moses had completed the term and was traveling with his family, he perceived from the side of the mount a fire. He said to his family, "Wait here. I have perceived a fire. I might bring you news from it, or a firebrand from the fire, that you might warm yourselves." So, two things: either he might bring news, or a firebrand from the fire. Then when he came to it, he was called from the right side of the valley, at the blessed side from the tree, "O Moses, I am God, the Lord of all creation." Okay, now, if you know anything about the story of Moses, there were two encounters with God that he had. One was here, and then the other one was at the mountain where he received the Al Kitab, the law, the writ from God. Okay, to continue, verse 31. And cast thou thy staff, and when he saw it stirring as it were dominus, he turned away and did not return. O Moses, draw thou nigh, and fear thou not, thou art of the secure. Insert thou thy hand into thy bosom, it will come forth without white, without evil, and draw thou thine arm to thee against fear. And these are two evidences from thy Lord to Pharaoh and his eminent ones. They are perfidious people. So you got two proofs. He said, my Lord, I killed the soul among them, and I fear that they will kill me. And my brother Aaron is more eloquent than I in speech, so send thou him with me as support to confirm me. I fear that they will deny me. So he fears that they will kill him, or that they will deny him. And now you see Aaron is also being brought in. So there will be two messengers going to Pharaoh. Said he, we will strengthen thine arm by thy brother, and we will appoint for you authority so they reach you not. By our proofs, you and those who follow you will be the victors. Just as an aside, this what God is saying here, we will appoint for you authority so they reach you not, as in God would assist them in power. And uh, the story, the way it continues is that when he comes to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh rejects him, and there's one part in the story where Pharaoh is going to kill Moses, and Moses seeks refuge in God from Pharaoh and his evils, and then a man from the family of Pharaoh stands up to protect Moses. So this is the authority that was appointed, so Pharaoh could not reach Moses. Obviously Moses didn't know all this was going to happen, but these are the words of God. He's already promised them, and then they are fulfilled as Moses continues on his mission, which is the whole believers theme that I talked to you about before. And when Moses came to them with our clear proofs, they said, this is only invented sorcery, and we heard not of this among our fathers of old. And Moses said, my Lord best knows who brings guidance from him and whose will be the final outcome of the abode. The wrongdoers are not successful. So the Lord, two again, he knows who brings guidance and whose will be the final outcome. And Pharaoh said, O eminent ones, I know not that you have a God other than me. So kindle thou for me, O Haman, upon the clay, and make thou for me a tower, that I might look upon the God of Moses, and I think him of the liars. And he had waxed proud, he and his forces, in the land without cause, and they thought that they would not be returned to us. God's promise is true, they will be returned. Then we seized him and his forces and cast them into the sea. So see thou how is the final outcome of the wrongdoers. So I told you about the river. Moses was saved and Pharaoh was drowned. And we appointed them leaders, inviting to the fire, and on the day of resurrection they will not be helped. And we caused a curse to follow them in the world, and on the day of resurrection will they be among those spurned. So God appointed them as leaders, inviting to the fire, and he caused a curse to follow them in the world. And on the day of resurrection will they be among those spurned. Okay, and we gave Moses the writ after we had destroyed the former generations, as a means of insight for mankind, and as a guidance, and as a mercy that they might take heed. Now, this writ, the Al-Kitab, you will see it in the context of Moses. Moses was given the Al-Kitab, the writ, and obviously Muhammad in the Quran has also received the writ, which is preserved in the Quran. So these are two writs. This is in the Quran. These are two writs. That's it. So again, you see the two. And thou wast not on the western side when we decreed to Moses the command, and thou wast not among the witnesses. So, like I said, Moses had two encounters with God. But we produced generations, and life was lengthened for them, and thou wast not a dweller among the house of Madian, reciting to them our proofs, but we were ever sending. And thou wast not on the side of the mount when we called, but as a mercy from thy Lord, that thou warn a people to whom no warner came before thee, that they might take heed. So that's the two again for Moses. And were it not that calamity should befall them because of what their hands sent ahead, then will they say, our Lord, oh, that thou hadst but sent for us a messenger, then would we have followed thy proofs and been among the believers. So we would have done two things. What? We would follow the proofs and been among the believers. But when there came to them the truth from us, they said, oh, that we were but given the like of what was given to Moses. Do they not deny what was given to Moses before? They say two sorceries supporting each other, and they say we are deniers of both. They're obviously referring to the Quran and the Torah. Say thou, then bring a writ from God that gives you better guidance than these. I will follow it if you be truthful. Actually, this is a question that I think if you ask the atheists, they come up and down and tell you, oh, our system is the best, etc. Say, okay, well, give us better guidance than the Quran. What is your guidance? Consumerism, um, partying, fornication. Is that better guidance than what we have? Okay, verse 50. And if they respond not to thee, know thou that they but follow their vain desires. And who is further astray than he who follows his vain desire without guidance from God? God guides not the wrongdoing people. And we have caused the word to reach them that they might take heed. Those to whom we gave the writ before it, they believe in it. So now this is talking about the writ before the Quran came, that's in the Torah. And when it is recited to them, they say, we believe in it. It is the truth from our Lord. Before it were we submitting. So we believe in it because it's the same thing. And we are submitting to the same writ. Those will be given the reward twice over because they were patient and they avert evil with good. And of what we have provided them, they spend twice over. And when they hear vain speech, they turn away from it and say, we have our works and you have your works. Peace be upon you. We seek not the ignorant. Thou guidest not whom thou likest, but God guides whom he wills, and he best knows the guided. So, I mean, this continues on. There's pairings in there as well, but I think the bulk of the pairings were what we discussed, what I showed you, what I read in the chapter 28 of the Quran. So, read it through carefully, see what you think. You find the pairings, more pairings than I found. They are there, I'm sure. The more readings you do, the more you're going to see them. And this is not just limited to chapter 28. There's other chapters in the Quran where there's an overwhelming amount of pairings. And in the Quran itself, like I said, it's woven into the fabric of the Quran. There's no denying that pairs play a particular role in the Quran. And I think it is one of the important proofs that this is a divine revelation. So, anyway, I hope that was of some use to you. God willing, until next time, peace and blessings be upon you.